Okay, let's jump over to this. Mark Stein said the Hawks may prefer to trade Trae Young over Dejounte Murray. Now, obviously, there's a lot of nuance to this. What would a return look like for Trae Young versus a return for Dejounte Murray? It goes beyond just which player fits better with the team, and they gotten a look at both players, but Trae Young potentially on the move. Um, Pretty polarizing among fans. I've seen that. There are a lot of fans that say his defense is awful. They want no part of him. He's not good. Right. There's other people who say, no, this dude's a star. This is going to be one of the big names out there on the market. Where do you fall on Trae Young? Is this a guy that teams should be willing to go all in to get?
If you have the right guys, or you think you can get the right guys to protect him on defense, go get him. Like, he's awesome. He's an offensive machine. Like,
Yeah.
he can keep you in games you have no business being in, win you games you shouldn't have won. And he's a guy who is, I think people think he is just this shameless gunner. He's a very willing passer. Like, he's a very good passer
He's
too. Like,
talented.
he's a very, very, very good offensive player. And I think what you could do is you get him on the right team where the right defenders are around him. They could kind of protect him. You definitely could have a big that can cover for him on drives and the like. I think what you'll see is, let's say that team ends up coalescing, comes together really strong, and now you're in the playoffs. I think you see Trae Young bring his effort level up really high to where it's, all right, he's still not a good defender, but he's giving really good effort, and that's helping. And he's defending in a scheme, and that's all you need him to do. He's never going to – Trae Young is not going to wake up one day and be like, all defense team, here I come. It's just not going to happen. He's too small. It's not the kind of player he is. But you put him on the right team and the right scheme, I think he'd be fine. So I would be all over it. I also understand the teams that are like, just give me Dejounte Murray. There's maybe less problems there. It may cost less to acquire Dejounte Murray.
Sure.
It's not as big of a cap hit. He is a guy who he's been the second, third guy on teams before. If we're bringing him in, I think this is one where fit matters so much versus just the two players side by side comparison. Tell me where they're going, and I'll tell you how I feel about the move for the team that got them.
Yeah, absolutely. The fit is going to matter a lot. Can you protect that player? Do you have the right pieces around them? That's going to be absolutely critical. This will be alongside, depending on what happens with Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young may wind up being the biggest name, the biggest target out there on the market. And so he's a guy that we're going to be keeping tabs on all summer, in addition to Dejounte Murray. But from the Hawks' perspective, do you like that idea of let's keep Dejounte and see you later, Trae?
I
guess it depends on the return, but
yeah, that's the key part. But I don't hate it just because it does, I think, rebalance their cap sheet in just a way where a lot more things are possible now. The Hawks are just, they did a little bit of that. I think we talked about it at the time. Yeah, they cleaned some stuff up by trading John Collins, but they didn't fully clean things up. They are on the hook next year for about $163 million. So that is about $8 million under the luxury tax for 12 guys. So you're basically right at the luxury tax, and that's before doing anything with Saddiq Bey. Now you could clear a little bit more room if you move on from Garrison Matthews or Bruno Fernando, and maybe that's what they do. And maybe Saddiq Bey coming off the injury, maybe you can get him on a really team-friendly deal now that you wouldn't have gotten him on before. But a year from then, you got to sign Jalen Johnson. So now you're just in a spot where, yeah, we're sitting here on an awful lot of money. Now, when that comes up, Clint Capella will be off the books, but you're just kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit here. And that becomes the challenging thing, I think, for the Hawks is at some point, something has to give to get off some of the long-term money so you can really reset your cap sheet, because you can't continue to dance around the luxury tax line and be a 500 team in the play-in tournament. It's just not good enough. And the ownership group's not going to accept it. And eventually people will start losing jobs over it. So you do need to figure out a way to kind of reset. And the Trae Young trade could be a way to bring in young talent, draft assets, and clear salary off your books. That could be kind of a that like is, hey, we did a 3-for-1 in terms of goals accomplished in one trade, where Dejounte Murray could do a similar-ish thing, just not at the same level would happen with Trae Young.
If they do that, I think we're far enough removed from the Trae Luka trade where the optics aren't quite as bad as they may have
Sure.
been if they'd done this a couple seasons ago, like admitting that you
Yep.
messed up. But essentially, I mean, and I guess you could look at the assets you would get from Trae and you would say, okay, that's a continuation of that. But at this point, you really, what'd you get? You got, it was Cam Reddish and Trae Young is what you got in exchange for Luka in that trade. For neither one of those players to be on the Hawks anymore, that would have to sting a little bit. But of course, it's sunk cost. It's already happened. It's done, and you just got to move on and make the best move from here forward and look ahead for your franchise. And obviously, you can recoup some assets with Trae. So it wouldn't shock me if they do decide to go ahead and move on from him. But he's like, those two are always going to be connected. You go back to that draft night trade, and obviously doesn't look great now for Atlanta at this point.
Yeah, you've also got the Kings are continuing to catch flack for not drafting Luka.
Sure. 100%.
People have still said the Suns blew it by not drafting him when the Suns had his Slovenian national team coach
Right.
already in the fold. Like there's times where like that one's going to be.
It happens.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna. I don't want to say Luka. I'm not saying this because Luka's going to be MJ, because I mean we're still trying to find out is LeBron MJ, and I think those two have separated themselves by a pretty wide margin in the all-time greatest player debate. But that's the kind of thing where it is, well, we need a big, well, we need this. That's where teams go wrong in the draft. If you start drafting that kind of stuff and you pass up on guys, it gets super messy, and that's where it'll be there. But you're absolutely right. Like it'll be tied together. But I think if you're the Hawks, if that factors into, well, we can't trade Trae Young because 6 years ago we didn't draft Luka Doncic. That's them fire everybody and just start over all together, because that's not like that's crying over spilled milk that's long since evaporated. You just got to move on at this point and make your best moves for the franchise moving forward.